Hi, this is Justin Patton from the Murray State University Recording Studio, and this is the second installment of our summer recording workshops. The first installment was all about microphones, and this is about what comes next. And this is very interesting stuff, but it's kind of like microphones all over again. What comes next also can color the sound. It also can change things in a subtle way, and people can obsess about it just like they obsess about microphones. I want to tell you a little story so that we can kind of put this into perspective, and hopefully that'll give you a platform from which to spring off of. A few years ago, I had a great opportunity to work with some really expensive equipment. It was not mine, it was not Murray State's, it just came in on loan and then left again, and I never got to see it. Among this equipment was an $8,000 microphone. So we put that on the lead vocal. After we did this session with this really crazy expensive stuff that I will probably never get a chance to touch again in my life, I sent this off to the mix engineer. I was just the tracking guy. I just laid the tracks down. Somebody else was going to balance everything, process everything, mix everything. When I got the project back from the mix engineer, I listened and I thought to myself, I don't hear one thing special about that lead vocal. It sounds to me like you could have cut it with an SM58, a $100 dynamic mic that you would just grab from the back corner of a stage somewhere, not an $8,000 condenser that you carry around, like it's a baby. And that got me to wondering, was there no benefit to these ridiculously expensive microphones? I mean, it certainly didn't sound 80 times better, even though it was 80 times more expensive than a 58. I got to thinking, the mix guy probably didn't even know it was a really expensive mic. He just treated that lead vocal like he was going to anyway, and he processed it and colored it and treated it in the way that he felt like it needed to be treated. If I was mixing, I would have known it was an $8,000 mic, and I probably would have worked a lot harder to keep the actual character of that microphone intact so that when you heard it, hopefully you heard some of the natural sound of that microphone. I'm a purist. I tend to do as little processing as I possibly can because I want to keep these sounds with as much integrity as I possibly can from the beginning of the project. That means if I choose a mic, I want it to sound like that mic. I don't want to process that mic into something different. I want people to hear this is what a $8,000 mic sounds like. So the question remains, if you have a really expensive piece of equipment versus a much less expensive piece of equipment, is it a guarantee that it's going to be a night and day difference? No. Sometimes, but not all the time. Totally depends on how you're going to use it, totally depends on where you're placing it. So let's kind of put to bed the hype that we see so prevalently in the magazines that say this thing is going to just knock your socks off. Is the $8,000 mic better? Yes. Is it 80 times better? No. No, nowhere close. So back to the main topic today. After the microphone, what happens to the signal? You've got a mic, you've got a cable, and that plugs into what? The answer is a mic preamp. A mic preamp, a preamplifier to boost the signal. Now, a mic preamp is a component that we often don't even think about because they're in all kinds of things. You can find a mic preamp in a keyboard amplifier. It's the place where you plug the mic in and you turn the volume up. That little knob there is your mic preamp. You find mic preamps much more commonly in a mixing board. Here we have an 8-channel old Fostex recording mixing board. Each one of those channels has a mic pre at the top of the channel. It's the first thing that you turn up in order to get your levels. So it's its own individual component, even though we don't think about a mic preamp very regularly as a standalone device. But they can be standalone devices, and if you do buy a standalone mic preamp, you're probably getting a much more expensive mic preamp. And this is where some of that hype comes in. And some of it is worth something, some of it's worth nothing, and we kind of have to sort through it all and figure out what's worth what. So right here, I have a 2-rack space Millennia HV3D, and there are 4 big knobs on it. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's got phantom power. This is a standalone mic pre. So I can plug 4 mics into this Millennia, crank those knobs up, and I boost my mic from mic level to line level. That's basically all a mic pre does. It raises the level from mic level, which is pretty much unusable by most of our electronics, up to line level, a good strong signal. This Millennia has been designed for classical recording and jazz recording. The people who designed it wanted to retain as much ambient information as they possibly could. So their focal point was making sure that they didn't lose anything at all from the microphone. And that includes the very, very subtle, weak signals of sound bouncing back off walls that are like 60 feet away. It doesn't have EQ. You can't boost the highs. You can't roll off the lows. It doesn't flip the phase. It doesn't add reverb. It does nothing but boost the level from mic level to line level. How much does it cost? For these 4 channels, it's about $3,000. This mixing board, even in its heyday when it was brand new, did not cost $3,000, and yet it's got twice as many mic pre's. So we can automatically figure out with a little quick math that these mic pre's are less expensive than the Millennia standalones. And yet this is what most of us are using when we're doing any type of recording. We're recording right off the board, or we're recording right off of a little handheld device that has mic pre's built into it for the onboard mics. There's no reason to feel like these lesser mic pre's are terrible. They work great for a whole lot of things. Let's face it, we don't want to spend $700 per channel just for a mic pre. We want to be able to spend less than $700 and actually have a full-on audio interface, which we'll get to in just a second. So the thing to remember about mic pre's is that you need them. You can't use your mic without one, and they can be really cheap and still pretty good, or they can be really expensive and be really good. But the question always comes back to, what are you doing? Are you doing really critical classical recording where you have to have that ambience? If that's so, then you probably want to spend a little bit more on your mic pre's. If you're going to be recording a rock band with everything only 6 inches away and you want to kill all the ambience, then your less expensive mic pre's are probably going to be just fine. These audio interfaces that I have here, I've got a couple of them. A Duet by Apogee, and it is a bus-powered device. That means that when I plug it in with its FireWire cable, it gets all its power right off your laptop. And this makes it really mobile. It's very sleek and thin, easy to drop into a computer bag, and with your mics and your laptop, you can go out into the middle of a field and record the birds with no cables attached. Here's the Audient ID22. It's another interface. This is a USB interface, which is different from the FireWire. They sound about the same. There's really not a huge difference to pick one or the other, although I will say that I've started picking USB because I don't think FireWire is going to be around forever. I'm looking at the new Macs and I'm seeing less and less FireWire, so I think they're trying to phase that out, probably go with Thunderbolt, and by the way, you can find Thunderbolt interfaces as well. This has 2 mic pre's, just like the Duet does. They're a different design, however, and some folks will nerd out about the discrete transistor design, which this has, being better. Other folks will tell you that that's just a pipe dream. Both of these interfaces cost about $500 or $600, although Audient just came out with a little brother version to this that's about $300 and still has a lot of the same features. $300 is a nice place to start. I don't know that I would want to go a whole lot cheaper than $300, and the ID14 is a nice budget entry into the world of decent audio interfaces. This is the ID22. It's got a few more features. I don't think that the sound is any better. In addition to having more features, this thing does not have a breakout cable. The Duet, being a more mobile unit, does, so that it can keep the size down. This is going to be plugged into an AC, so you're not going to be quite as mobile, but you do have this really cool option that the Duet does not have. You can add more channels to this via an optical digital input. So if you have an 8-channel mic pre that has optical out, you can plug it in here, and suddenly your 2-channel mic pre is a 10-channel system. There are modern mixing boards that do have USB connections, so if you wanted to, you could find a board similar to this that actually has 16 channels. The Behringer X32 is an inexpensive version of a digital live board that also doubles as an interface. So you can run a 16-channel live show in front of a live audience and still route that to your laptop and multi-track all 16 channels, so you can go back later and mix it down. And it's amazing how cheap they can do that. The cheapest version of the X32 is well under $2,000. So to continue this discussion about where the signal travels after it leaves the mic, of course it goes to a mic pre, either in a soundboard or an amp, or it's standalone pre, or even an audio interface if it's destined to be recorded digitally onto a computer. Now if it goes into an audio interface, in addition to having the mic pre's, those audio interfaces also have digital converters. You have to get it digitized to go to the computer. And so those things are similar again to this whole mysterious, mystical discussion about sound. You can spend thousands of dollars on standalone digital converters. Obviously, these things have digital converters in them that are a lot cheaper if they're $600 units. And you just have to use your ears. If you get a chance, you can peruse the forums online. Sometimes people will post audio examples. You can try to see if you can hear the difference between one converter or the other. But again, the truth is you pretty much get what you pay for. If you drop $50 on the cheapest interface you can find, it's probably not going to sound as good as a $500 interface. As you keep getting more and more expensive, those differences get smaller and smaller. So a $500 interface may be really hard to hear as inferior to a $2,000 interface. You might have to really spend a lot of time trying to hear the subtle differences before you can say, oh yeah, I can finally tell the $2,000 one has an edge. That's nice for us because we can get a lot of quality for less money. There are a lot of great manufacturers of audio interfaces. It's not just Apogee and Audient. PreSonus makes some good stuff. Avid makes great stuff. Focusrite. You just kind of want to look and see what it is that they are focusing on. For instance, this Duet is focused on mobility. This Audient is still pretty mobile, but it's less mobile, it's not bus powered, it's got a lot more controls. So I'm going to be able to access things more quickly without digging through software menus with all these buttons and knobs. So just to recap, remember we're following the signal after the microphone. It goes into a mic pre. It could be a really expensive standalone one like this Millennia, or it could just be one of many on some old analog mixing board. But the mic has to be amplified up to line level. After that, if I'm going into a computer to record, it also has to be converted to digital. So it goes through an analog to digital converter. Now with these interfaces, I have both of those things together. I've got the mic pre's and I've got the converters. They'll either be 2-channel or expandable up to 10 or expandable up to 16. I can have them as little units that can fit in the computer bag, or they might be rack mounted. All these things are going to do the same thing. They're going to function as a device that your DAW sees as an input. And if you have 16 inputs, then your DAW will give you 16 channels to record on, and you can arm each one independently. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it's useful to you, and keep watching for more. We're going to do a few more of these before the series is over. We're going to talk about the environments and how the room affects your recording, and then we're also going to do a real honest-to-God recording session where we try to stitch all this stuff together and see how it all actually works in a real live situation. Thanks.